Hello and welcome to this exclusive interview with Dr. Nasir Jamal Khattak, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Sawabi, a renowned educationist, social reformer, and a visionary in Pakistan. Dr. Khattak's immense contributions to the field of education have made him a true inspiration for students in Pakistan and around the world. As a professor of English and the head of one of the most prestigious universities in the country, Dr. Khattak has played a pivotal role in shaping the future of education in Pakistan. In this talk, we'll delve into his journey, his thoughts on education, his vision for the future of education in Pakistan, and much more. So sit back, relax, and join us in this fascinating conversation with Dr. Nasir Jamal Khattak. It's an honor, Dr. Khattak, to have you. Thank you for letting us learn from you.
Thank you.
My first question to you is this. Could you share with us what drew you to take up English as a subject and pursue a career in academia?
My grandfather was a teacher. Two of my uncles were teachers. So I would hear a lot about how they had students and, who would come and visit them. And those students perhaps would talk about how my grandfather and my uncles left their mark on them, etc., etc., etc. So maybe as a young kid, that is what I had in the back of my mind. For me, my grandfather continues to be my ideal.
Right.
So knowing that he was a teacher, perhaps I think I also wanted to be like him. Why I was drawn to English or how, I don't exactly know how. But this was one of the subjects in which I was, compared to other subjects, I would do much better.
Right.
And compared to the rest of the students, I somehow did very well in English.
Right.
When it entered my imagination, because it's, I come from Khattak, where the only time you hear English is on TV or on radio.
Yes.
So how, it entered my imagination, why I was fascinated with it, I do not know.
Right.
But one reason perhaps, again, is my grandfather, who,
Right.
when I was in my first year, gave me a book by Bertrand Russell, Why I'm Not a
Right.
Christian.
Yes.
And there were others as well, but perhaps that was one of the books that I continue to love, which is like, hey, I think I need to read a little more in English,
Yes.
or I need to read more books,
Right.
written in English. Until then, perhaps I was reading books that were written in Urdu.
Yes.
So maybe that's the reason. But somehow I was, as you said, drawn to it, but I don't know why.
Right.
My grandfather again would quote Ghalib and Hafiz Shirazi, and other poets. And it's like, and Sheikh Sadi. And it's like, I wish I could do that,
Right.
So maybe in the back of my mind, that is what I had, that, I decided to do my master's in English. My parents wanted me to be a doctor.
Yeah.
My family wanted me to be a doctor, knowing that the sight of blood would make me faint. Even if I would see a dead chicken, it's like I would faint. But still, they wanted me to be a doctor. And I'm glad that I didn't become a doctor. Not that being a doctor is not a good thing, but perhaps, I would have been doing a job. I wouldn't have been doing something that I was passionate about.
I think I have a point here. Mm-hmm. Here in Pakistan, I've noticed that every single person wants to be either a doctor or an engineer.
Right.
And I think the thing is, it's just
or
culture.
they want to join the army or the civil service.
So there are these 2 or 3 paths that everybody has in mind, and
that's a very typical middle class desire, because the middle class wants to have a means to achieving quick bucks.
Correct.
Earn quick money.
Yes.
So I think these professions, 4 of them, being a doctor, being an engineer, being an army officer, and being a civil servant or a bureaucrat, I think they earn you or they help you earn quick money. So I think that's why most people want to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think the world of education extends far beyond medicine and engineering.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's so many options
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
students could pursue.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to think beyond
Right.
beyond that, because it's not statistically possible for everyone to be a doctor, nor that's necessary, as
No,
you said.
no,
We
no.
need a lot more other professions, a lot more other
True.
professionals in Pakistan
True, true,
for our development and progress.
true, true. I think we need more thinkers.
Exactly.
And not that doctors don't think.
Yeah.
I hope they do. And all the engineers, and I hope they do too. I wouldn't say much about the other two professions, but I think we need more thinkers.
Exactly.
Social scientists who think, people who are from humanities who think,
Exactly.
because they are the ones who come up with ideas that shape perhaps my tomorrow or our
Correct.
tomorrow.
Yes.
So I agree with you. We need more people who perhaps don't go towards medicine or engineering
Yeah.
or any other field which they think
Exactly.
earns them quick buck.
That actually brings me to the next question. As an educationist, you have a vast experience in the field and a profound insight into the education system of Pakistan. What do you think are the challenges, apart, of course, from this one that every student wants to be either doctor or an engineer?
Okay.
What are the other
Oh,
challenges?
quite a few. First, as a country, we do not know what we want our education to do. We don't know
Be
that.
like, yes.
Since countries, have schools, colleges, and universities, we are a country. We also have schools, colleges, and
Yes.
universities. Which is why every now and then, every government that comes makes one or another mandatory subject.
Yes.
So if I want to be a computer scientist, I may not be studying as many computer courses as I might be studying of, let's say, my religion
Yes.
or of the history of Pakistan. So which means that, I as a country do not know what I want
Yeah.
my citizen to be like. So that's the biggest
Sense of
challenge.
direction.
That's
We
the
need a
biggest
sense of
challenge.
direction.
Right. And since we don't know what we want education to do, we don't even know if education is our priority.
Exactly.
It isn't.
Yes.
Which is why each time there is a budget, made, or when they realize that they are short of money, one sector which faces a serious slash is education.
Education goes down the list.
It does. And ironically, our belief system says that it's farz for all of us.
Exactly.
But it's not even, one of those distant optional choices that we have.
Yes.
So since it's not a state priority, it doesn't get the attention, it doesn't get the resources that it should. Which is why most of the times we talk about how our education standard continues to drop down. And how most of the times people think about how in the past, a plain matriculate was much better than how a graduate is today.
Exactly.
While, one can blame nostalgia for it because we love to look at the past. But I think there is some truth in that
There is
too.
truth.
Because in the past, in schools, we wanted our kids to learn how to think.
Yes.
Now we want our kids to learn what to think.
Yes.
Someone has done the thinking for them.
Yeah.
And for me, not having it as a priority or not having enough resources, they are problems,
Yes.
but they're not such big problems. The biggest problem is we want our education to produce graduates whom I call half-baked.
Yes.
I have a degree, but I'm not an independent thinker.
Exactly.
Someone has done the thinking for me, I just follow that. And that's the biggest challenge. Another one is how perhaps we believe in numbers.
Yes.
So we may have a big number of, PhDs.
Yes.
But if you put all of us together, the assets, the intellectual assets
Yes.
that I should have in my account, they don't come close to
Exactly.
what we should have. So these are some of the challenges, I think.
Yeah, and also as you talked of numbers, brings to my mind, the issue of research.
Right.
Research is like a hot thing around the world.
Right.
But I've noticed in Pakistan, most students and even some faculty members,
Right.
they're after numbers.
Right.
So when you look at the research publications, you see
True.
a big number.
True.
But when you go deep into it, there's no
Right.
substance.
That is true.
So
But
I
that's because I think we are a people who want to check boxes.
Yes.
Do you have research papers? Yes. How many? 15.
Yeah.
Is that good enough to help you become a professor? Yes. So let's make him a professor. So, we check boxes, and since it's not a priority,
Yes.
I'm not as committed to doing my research as I should be or as I could have been. And more important than these is perhaps the reason how I was never encouraged. My educational background, my academic culture does not help me learn how to think.
Exactly.
For research, if you have a problem with how to think, you may be mimicking research, but you're not doing research. So which is why the numbers will be very, very high when you mimic
Yes.
research. So I'm mimicking research.
Yeah.
I'm not doing research. I need to have, a very, very large number
Yeah.
of papers for me to qualify for this or qualify for that.
Exactly.
But my research doesn't have the kind of impact that it should have.
Exactly.
And in most cases, if I've come with a degree from outside,
Yes.
the technology or the knowledge or the skills that I acquired there, I have not been able to indigenize those skills here. So, I am physically in Pakistan, but intellectually perhaps I still work in
Exactly.
the same space
Yes.
where the data was collected, which
Yes.
is far, far away from here. And since I never learned how to think,
Yes.
I never acquired the skill of how to indigenize that,
How to
that
sync
skill.
myself here
Exactly.
with this.
So my research has nothing to do with my immediate environment.
Yes.
So I'm ineffectively beating my wings in the air
Exactly.
without flying. you
Yes.
know. Yeah.
And I think the lesson here should be for students to have research. Research should be encouraged, but not to do it just for the sake of number of publications.
True, true.
Yeah.
See, that's one thing that I tell my colleagues, that we open a university today, and the next day it begins to churn out PhDs.
Yes, exactly.
We don't have the kind of maturity, infrastructural maturity, academic maturity,
Correct.
intellectual maturity for the university to produce PhDs.
Of high
So
caliber.
Exactly. So we just look at this, we start with the minimum. How many PhDs do we need in a department to start PhDs? 3. How many do we have? 3. Let's start.
Yes.
So we end up producing PhDs who perhaps do not have as much
Correct.
of knowledge with them, unfortunately, as they should.
Yes. Okay, my other question is related to our culture. We are all proud of being Pukhtuns, and we are proud of our culture. Yet in some societies, including the Pushtun culture, people are resistant to change and
Right.
new ideas. How do you think we can tackle this resistance to promote progress and development?
Well, when you resist change, and that I think is driven by fear.
Yes.
You're afraid,
Yes.
and that's why you don't accept or embrace change.
Yes.
And in this part of the world, I think fear is one of those things which perhaps is either genuinely there
Yeah.
or is artificially created.
Yeah.
In both
Indoctrinated.
cases, yes. In both cases, it's going to make me averse to change.
Yes.
Why I am afraid of change is because when in the past there was some change, it was hardly ever brought about after taking me into account.
Yes.
No. So they changed things for me, what they believed was good for me.
Yes.
Nobody ever asked me what I thought was good for me.
Yes.
So, which means that, change did not come from the proverbial grassroots.
Yes.
It came from the top
Yes.
to bottom.
Yeah.
Now, any change that comes from the top to bottom,
External change is
exactly,
difficult to accept,
that's
yes.
not
And
likely
I think
to,
that's a very
take roots.
important point,
Yeah.
because as a psychiatrist, I can attest to that, and that exists in our culture, not only at the level of the government or policy making, but down to the family system.
True.
We haven't been actually encouraged to think for ourselves.
True.
So we live in a society where everything is made for us, created for us, out of the fear, even that people, our parents or our loved ones, out of the fear that something might happen to us. So we don't actually get to learn anything. We don't experiment, and when you don't take risks, you don't think.
The problem is that if I have kids, I don't unconsciously think of them as an extension of me.
Yes.
I think of them more as my pets,
Exactly.
whom I carry around in cages,
Yes.
who have to do things as I tell them they should.
Yes.
So which means the capacity to think, that is somehow stopped, curtailed.
Yes.
In what we call home.
Exactly.
It's so ironic.
I can't agree with you more.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the tragedies of our society, especially because elsewhere in many countries it may be present to some extent, but especially in our Pakhtun culture, I think this creativity, ability to think, take decisions, it's highly discouraged.
Well, that's because I think we exist on a physical level.
Yes.
And so instead of winning over hearts, we believe in controlling bodies.
Exactly.
So instead of appealing to people's mind,
Exactly.
we would rather scare the body.
Yes.
So my kids
Take the rod and teach a
exactly.
lesson.
My kids are quiet before me, not because I have made them speechless with my ideas or actions, but because if they talk, I'm going to snub them or I'm going to insult them. So they would rather keep quiet, and I take pride in having obedient kids.
Exactly.
So we somehow try to have people who are obedient. Obedience is perhaps one of the most horrible things that a human can have. You shouldn't be obedient. We actually equate fear with respect. So like, when I get into a class, when I go into a class, I usually ask students why they stand for me. They say, oh, because we respect you. I said, no, you don't respect me.
Yes.
You're afraid of me.
Yes.
Respect is when you do things in the absence of the person who asked you to do those things.
Exactly.
So if I tell you to do your homework, you come up with all excuses, but you don't do your homework.
So if the fear is there, but respect.
Exactly.
Genuine respect.
So you do your homework, not because you want to listen to me, but you do your homework because you lose the credit. So if there is a homework for which you are not going to be given marks or grades, you don't do that.
Yes.
But if there is a grade attached to it, or if there are marks attached to it, then you are likely to do that work.
Exactly. My next question is in the same vein.
Right.
We as a society pride ourselves on our gallantry and valor.
Right.
Yet I feel there's nothing honorable or valorous about being arrogant, aggressive, or vengeful.
Right.
Do you think these values may be overly glamorized in our culture?
Oh yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we have to revisit our notion of courage.
Yes. Arms and guns and display of...
I think, most of us unfortunately believe that if I scream at the top of my lungs, that makes my argument really very, very strong. One. Two, as I said before, we are a people who live on a physical level.
Yes.
So we think in terms of muscles. We don't think in terms of brains.
Exactly.
So, which is why, we are going to do things which will show use of sheer force, then appeal to my mind or then appeal to my intellect. So if, for example, we look at, the notion of gallantry, as you call it, bravery, I usually tell my kids, I personally think that if somebody uses foul language for you and you have the ability to absorb it and not smack the person across his face or her face, then that means you're brave. That's courage. That means you're brave. Okay. Similarly, the notion of honor, the twisted notion of honor that we Pakhtuns have, we need to reconsider that.
Exactly.
So if, for example, somebody does something which I find undesirable.
Yes.
And if I go and hurt that person
Yeah.
to the extent of hurting him, her really,
Yeah.
really badly, that is not being
Exactly.
honorable. No,
Yes.
I don't think there is any honor in hurting other people. I don't think there is any honor in, forget about
Yeah.
killing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think there is any honor in beating up my kids or my wife or my
Exactly.
sister or sisters
Yeah.
or anyone for that matter.
I think this
you know?
message needs to go to all of us, and everybody needs to understand this, because somehow we feel like being aggressive is honorable, but I think
Yeah.
there is nothing noble about taking out your knife to stab another person.
No, not
Stabbing
at all.
someone
Not at
is
all.
far easier than actually tolerating.
We physically assault people
Yeah.
because unconsciously we declare we don't have any intellectual way of handling that
Exactly, the
person.
matter.
So we get we get even with him, or we try to be even with him on physical levels.
Yes,
I run out of arguments, so I'm going to punch you.
exactly.
Instead of saying, it's like, yeah, I think you make sense,
Yeah.
and thank you for pointing this
Yeah.
out to me.
Yeah, let me
Which would
think about
mean-
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which would mean that there is some sort of an addition to my knowledge and my attitude towards life. So instead of thanking that person, I would rather, sit on a high self-righteous horse
Yes.
and declare the right person wrong
Yeah.
and hit him, her.
Yeah, to
with-
administer correction by
exactly
beating the
with
person.
one thing or another, and take pride in that. I mean, how much more twisted can one be?
Exactly.
you know?
I think in the last 10 years or so, Pakistani society has changed, and not for the better. People have become intolerant and opinionated. Having a healthy debate these days is quite challenging.
Right.
Whether it's about politics or faith or any other issue. How can we tackle this, I would call it, alarming situation?
It is very alarming. In fact, some time back I read a research paper in which the researcher said, I shouldn't say accused, the researcher said that people in Pakistan are suffering from mass schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And for you as a psychiatrist, that
Well,
might
this
be
is something I heard also
Yeah.
from one of my seniors.
Right.
And he said the same thing, so I
Right.
can relate to that.
So we need to ask ourselves why we are like that.
Yeah.
Okay. If, for example, we say in Pashto, if I take a few rocks and every day I talk to those rocks about one thing,
Yes.
and then wherever that rock goes, the
Yes.
rock hears about that one thing
Yes.
everywhere. Rocks don't talk, but that rock is going to talk.
Yes.
So we are like that.
Yeah.
If you open our textbooks,
Yeah.
we glamorize killing people.
Yes.
Those if you look at our heroes,
Yeah.
they're not doctors who
Yes.
save lives. They are, fighters.
A few people and their
They're fighters. And what do fighters do? They kill.
yes.
So our heroes are not engineers.
Yeah.
What do engineers do? They build bridges.
Yes.
Who are our heroes?
Exactly.
Our heroes are those people who raise walls.
Yes.
We don't need more walls.
Exactly.
We need bridges which can connect people.
Yes.
So why we are like that, why we have become so intolerant, is because intolerance is promoted in a way, I would say.
Yes.
Why? Because instead of helping me see how you and I are similar, my society, my education system, my state, the national
Emphasizes
narrative,
on the differences.
differences. You know?
Yes. And I think this polarization is just dangerous for our society.
Absolutely.
Because the way it's headed, I don't know where it's going to get.
Absolutely. So, if you look at the Pak study, as we call it, that we teach, the subject of Pak study, it's like, God, it's full of lies, where we have created a self
Yes.
which has nothing to do with reality.
Exactly.
So I begin to believe that is what I am, as Pak study shows me, and then I get into real life and I understand that I
has no connection
exactly that I don't
with
come
that
close.
concocted story. Yes, I think
So I'm at war with myself.
exactly.
The two selves that I deal with.
Yes,
The one that I'm sold and the
Yeah.
other that I deal with.
I think
And the
that-
two are
yeah.
poles apart.
Yeah, the fiction in the textbooks has nothing to do with, or is quite different from
True.
the reality on the ground.
True.
I think that's very right.
True.
Dr. Khattak, what's your vision for the University of Sawabi? Where do you see this varsity in the next few years?
Well, I hope it becomes financially independent. It isn't.
Yes.
Unfortunately, and it continues to lose the resources, and the main resource is the state.
Yes.
The state continues to slash the funding,
Yes.
even though we have tried to be as frugal with our available resources as we can. But there are things that you have to do in the university, So, so that is one thing that I hope that we manage to do. Another one is, that it should think about vertical growth,
Yes.
that it shouldn't open more disciplines.
Yes.
It should focus on strengthening the one that it has. Third, I have a hope that it attracts students from outside the immediate neighborhood.
Yes.
Most of our students are from the immediate neighborhood,
Yes.
which is not how universities should be.
Yes.
Universities should be centers of diversity.
Yeah, attract people from everywhere.
Right. So, but I think I would blame that lack of diversity on not having hostels.
Yes.
So hopefully in the few years to come, that for which we have planned, the few years for which we have planned, we will have our hostels, and which will hopefully attract students from all over Pakistan. And another, part of, not a vision, but my wish is that it produces good quality graduates who at least, if don't know how to think for themselves,
Yes.
at least question things.
Yes.
And that is one thing that I would want our graduates to do, to understand that there's nothing wrong with asking questions.
Yes.
And that it is not absolutely essential that we must find answers to the questions that we ask,
Yes.
but that we must ask questions. So these are some of the things that I wish the University of Sawabi can do. Financial independence will be more important, and then vertical growth,
Yes.
and then having diversity, and then having attracting quality teachers. At the moment, we are in the middle of nowhere, as you can see, which is why we perhaps do not attract as many good teachers as we potentially can. So let's hope that whoever comes, whoever the next VC is, follows the same, the same goals. Well, not my steps, but brings her own vision,
Yes.
and tries to adjust our plans and our programs with her vision as well, not drop them down altogether. And that will hopefully help the University of Sawabi more.
Well, I have no doubt that under your great auspices, the University of Sawabi will become one of the best. It is already one of the best universities, but your vision will place it on the map, and I think it will attract students.
Thank you. It's very kind of you. I hope that we become one of the best, and we are trying. We have challenges, but we have a hope.
From my short visit today to the varsity, I've seen that the dedication with which everyone is working, down to the laborers who are fixing, the iron railings and the gardeners. I have no doubt that it will soon reach a different level, the next higher level.
One of the things that I try to do is to have a team, autonomous team,
Yes.
which can work without being told what they need to do.
Yes.
Most of the times in most universities, they look up to the VC. I tell them, no, don't look up to me. Let's sit together, and whatever the collective wisdom decides is what we do.
Yes.
And if we could do that,
Yes.
I think University of Sawabi will be well off then in the
Yes.
days to come. Yeah.
Dr. Khattak, on a personal level,
Yeah.
do you have any hobbies or interests
Oh,
outside your
yes.
professional work?
Oh, yeah, sure. I love to read.
Yes.
But that shouldn't even be a hobby. It's more of a mandatory thing. But
Yes.
I'm very fond of fountain pens.
Wow.
I love fountain pens.
Okay.
And I'm very fond of music.
Yes.
I'm very fond of atana.
Yes.
And so listening to music is one of the things that I do regularly.
Wonderful.
And playing with my fountain pens, cleaning them, filling them up, that's another thing that I do. And trekking, going into mountains,
Yes.
because I think that's a very humbling experience. When you're surrounded by mighty mountains,
Yes.
you think of yourself as a small little particle.
Yes.
And so these are some of the things that I like to do in my free time.
Yeah. I want to ask my final question.
Sure.
As an English professor,
Yeah.
what do you see as the value of teaching language and literature in today's world?
Oh, yeah. I think we need to understand societies around us. We don't have the resources to visit different societies to understand them.
Yes.
The next closest thing that can help us understand other societies is to study literature,
Yeah.
their literature, our literature. So for me to be able to know who I am, I need to understand my literature.
Yes.
I need to study my literature. And for me to be able to understand the kind of people that I have around me in my immediate or distant neighborhood,
Yeah.
I need to study their literature as well. And for me to be able to know what they are doing, by they I mean my neighbors and everybody, I need to understand and need to have proficiency in their language. So learning how to speak the language of others is a tool, is a means to getting to know those people better. So I think that if we ever needed to learn other languages, and if we ever needed to study other literatures, now is the time.
Yes.
And perhaps that could help Pakistan become a
To
tolerant society.
Give us different perspectives.
Oh yeah,
on
absolutely.
things.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Dr. Khattak, for taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you.
It's been a great pleasure to hear your thoughts and insights.
Thank you. Good luck.